Have you ever felt the pain of losing someone you care about? It's a common human experience, but what if I told you that according to Stoic philosophy, you haven't truly lost that person? You've simply returned them? Followers of Stoicism believe that everything in life is temporary, including relationships. When someone leaves your life, it's not a loss but a return to the natural order of things. People come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. According to Epictetus, desiring control and hoping that loved ones will live forever is unwise because we cannot achieve that and are hoping for the impossible. However, when we lose loved ones, struggling and suffering seems to be a natural part of life. Being vigilant about the prospect of loss is also natural, causing many people to feel anxious. The Stoics recognize that the fear of loss and the pain of sorrow are unnecessary consequences of irrational thinking. This video explores Stoic philosophy in the context of attachment, loss, and how we cope with being separated from loved ones. Strong connections with others seem to be an indispensable and accepted part of daily life. In many cases, our biological mechanisms have compelled us to form bonds with others. However, the degree of our attachment varies, from liking and attraction to unhealthy obsession with someone. When we feel connected to someone, what we desire most is to have them by our side. And when they are with us, we don't want them to leave. On the surface of emotions, that attitude can lead to many difficulties, and it becomes even more complex when it is stronger. When we become attached to something we cannot control, whether it's an object or a person, it leads us to depend our happiness on fate. Ultimately, fate decides whether what we are attached to will stay with us or leave us. And that's why Fortuna, the goddess of luck, can mock us, leading us from joy to sorrow. Often, we try our best to avoid being separated from those and the things we're attached to, as illustrated in the story of Anakin Skywalker when he betrayed the Jedi Order and joined the dark side solely to protect Padme. According to the Stoic perspective, Anakin Skywalker lacked true freedom. His desires and cravings became a kind of shackles, making him a prisoner of himself. He became a tool controlled by fate, with no ability to decide for his own life. If Anakin had true freedom, his actions wouldn't be governed by external factors like attachment and desire, as well as negative emotions such as fear, hatred, and jealousy. Instead, he would act based on reason, unaffected by external influences and distressing emotions. At its core, the effort to keep the people we love in our lives is often a selfish act. When we want them by our side, it's often not for mutual benefit but to satisfy our own desires. It's the aversion to what we love being taken away. For our own benefit, we often make decisions that are not sensible or wise, simply because we want to fulfill our desires. As Epictetus said, we often show hatred, blame, and curse anything that obstructs our self-interest, as seen clearly in the actions of Anakin Skywalker, who caused destruction only to satisfy his selfish desires. Due to its selfish nature, we often hold no love higher than our own self-interest, whether it's the love of a father, sibling, relative, country, or God. When we feel that the gods are obstructing our path to this, we may even curse them, defame their image, and destroy their temples, as Alexander did when he ordered the burning of the temple of Asclepius after the death of his beloved. It could be argued that in society, romantic love is often glorified, and strong bonds are seen as cherished goals. However, the constraints we cannot control often lead to unintended consequences. How many tragedies and acts of violence have occurred because of these constraints? When loss occurs, such as when a friend passes away, a partner leaves, or a child distances themselves, we often feel like we've lost a part of ourselves. When we have to part with those we care about, it can feel like losing a part of ourselves. However, according to the perspective of those who follow Stoic philosophy, this is not accurate. We don't lose them, we simply return them, because they were never truly ours. Instead of saying, "I lost them," we should say, "I returned them." This emphasizes reflection and acceptance of the temporary and uncontrollable aspects of life. Your child has passed away? That's just a return. Your wife has died? She's also just a return. Epictetus said. In the fourth book of his Discourses, he elaborates extensively on why external factors such as children, family, or spouses are not within our control and therefore, not truly ours. Most of what we consider possessions are not actually ours, because we can lose them in an instant, and that creates a profound sadness. When speaking about those we bond with, we often find ourselves entering a blurry area. In Epictetus's time, slavery was commonplace. People often viewed others as their property. Epictetus himself was once a slave before embarking on teaching philosophy in Rome and later in Nicopolis. However, today, slavery no longer exists, and we often do not consider those around us, whether they be employees, family members, or friends, as our property. Even though we don't view those around us as our property, we often still feel a sense of entitlement to their presence. We think that friends and family should dedicate time and attention to us, employees should arrive to work on time, and spouses should do things that make us happy. Furthermore, we often feel a strong connection to those we care about, as if they are an indispensable part of our lives. Occasionally, we may think that we own something or someone, but the reality is quite different. External things never truly belong to us because if they did, they would always obey our will, never leave us, and no one could take them away. Therefore, from the Stoic perspective, believing that we own external things is just an illusion, a contradiction to reality. When you want your body to be preserved, is that within your control? Not certain. And when you desire health for your body? Also uncertain. And finally, when you want life or death? That, too, is not entirely within my control. Therefore, your body is not solely yours, but depends on all those stronger than you. Of course. And can you control it at any time and as you wish, under conditions that you desire? No, it's impossible. And your slaves? No. And your clothes? Neither. And your shabby house? Not that either. And your horses? None of those. And if you want your children, spouse, siblings, or friends to survive by all means, is that within your control? No, it is not. Epictetus promoted the notion that all external things adhere to an invisible force, something beyond human control. He termed it the revolution of the universe, a power surpassing human governance, only possibly belonging to an almighty deity. Meanwhile, when Padme told Anakin that he couldn't do everything, Anakin realized that he should be so to protect Padme, understanding that only through the ultimate power could her safety be ensured. This reflects Anakin's recognition of human helplessness in the face of the uncontrollable power of the universe. That's true. We often label romantic love as a state of passion, an intense and uncontrollable feeling. Attraction to another person can fuel passion, leading us into complex and unstable emotional states. Modern society often views connecting with romantic love as positive, and many even consider being in love as one of the highest emotional states a person can experience. It's not surprising that ancient Stoics viewed passion as an obstacle. They regarded the four passions, joy, desire, pain, and fear, as a discordant symphony. Bonding with someone wasn't seen as deep love, but rather as an integration into this symphony of passions. When a close friend is nearby, we may feel joy. When he's absent, we often feel the need for his presence. A man in love with a woman fears losing her. And when she leaves or departs forever, the pain may be the hardest thing he has to face. However, according to the Stoic perspective, thoughts related to passion are often irrational judgments about the situation. For example, in their view, someone's presence doesn't always bring about something beneficial. There's nothing wrong when someone leaves you or when they pass away. Loss and death are natural parts of life. Indeed, they are unavoidable. But if we assess everything irrationally, seeing some things as good and others as bad, we trigger unnecessary passions because our thoughts don't follow reason. So, Stoics try to eliminate these passions by using reason. Let's start with the simplest and most common things, those we often overlook. A pot, a cup, easily breakable objects. Next, move on to more important things like clothes, a dog, or a horse. Gradually, recognize the value of everything, from belongings to your own body and the loved ones in your life. That's how we can learn to appreciate everything consciously. Observe around and relinquish what isn't truly yours. Cleanse your thoughts, eliminate unnecessary judgments, for fear that things not belonging to you might become too attached, and when they vanish, you may feel deeply hurt. In the conversation between Anakin and Padme about their love and longing, Padme seeks to heed the voice of reason. With Anakin's responsibility to the Jedi Order and Padme's esteemed position as a senator, a romantic love between them is impossible. Despite any feelings they may have for each other. However, Anakin once said something, and I quote, "You want me to be rational? That is something I know I cannot do. Believe me, I wish I could just wish away my feelings, but I can't." But can he? According to Stoicism, with rationality, discipline, and proper practice, one can learn to let go of tight bonds with others and endure their departure from our lives. But should Stoic practitioners become indifferent when facing loss? Maintaining composure after losing loved ones is a challenge for most people. Freeing oneself from passions is the focus of Stoicism, but it's challenging and requires both time and regular practice. Even classical Stoic philosophers like Epictetus, Chrysippus, and Seneca might not have been perfect in this endeavor, though they at least attempted it. Moreover, Stoics acknowledge the existence of what they call primitive emotions, natural emotions that arise spontaneously and are beyond our control. Primitive emotions can cause us to react naturally when facing danger or hearing about heart-wrenching tragedies. However, Stoicism isn't about suppressing these bodily reactions but rather freeing oneself from the passions that arise afterward if we think irrationally. In Seneca's letters, we see a notable way to confront the pain of loss. In 41 AD, Seneca's life took a tumultuous turn when the new empress, Messalina, accused him of adultery, an event still debated by some historians. Although initially sentenced to death by the Senate, Emperor Claudius decided to commute the sentence to exile. Seneca then set off for the island of Corsica, where he would spend the next 8 years in hardship and solitude. During his time in exile, he wrote a letter to his mother, Helvia, to comfort her in times of distress over her son's unfortunate fate. Seneca advised his mother not to let herself become excessively overwhelmed by grief. He reminded her that their ancestors had limited their mourning period to 10 months after losing a spouse, allowing them to regulate their emotions of sorrow. Seneca said, "They did not forbid that woman to weep, but they limited her sorrow. For allowing unlimited grief at the loss of a loved one is a sign of foolish weakness, not of a firm and natural heart. There is no intention never to express grief. The most balanced path between emotion and rigid reason is to feel regret but still exercise restraint." Exactly, Seneca's perspective encourages us to embrace grief in a moderated and limited manner. This view on sorrow contrasts sharply with the ideal of Epictetus, who describes an individual as unfeeling, unaffected by the loss of loved ones. However, the majority of people, including Seneca's mother, are not Stoic philosophers and will have to confront grief. For them, Seneca proposes a practical approach to dealing with loss, not a complete acceptance of suffering, but moderation. However, he advises his mother to take responsibility for emotional well-being by learning and applying philosophy to her life. "This will help heal your wounds and dispel all sadness," he writes. By embracing this mindset, we can learn to let go of attachments and accept the transient nature of relationships. Instead of clinging to what is past, we can cherish the time we had together and the lessons we learned. So, the next time someone leaves your life, remember that you haven't lost them. You're simply returning them to the universe. Trust that everything happens for a reason and that new opportunities for growth and connection will come to you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our channel for more detailed information about Stoic philosophy.